it's very depressing when I see photographs of Baghdad today.
Yes. No, that is I mean, after leaving Iraq in '91, I kept up with the news on a daily basis. So I thought in going back in 2003 that I had prepared myself. And even read a lot of material about, you know, how exiles and returnees feel, but it was still shocking. But it was even more shocking and sad when I went back 2 years ago. I went again 2 years ago just on a personal visit and gave a poetry reading. But in going around the city, you know, there was not one spot in the city that was not dirty and ugly. And that is something that is very sad, because it has become one of the most polluted cities in the world. But it's also the way urban space has changed and public space. I mean, there are very few women in public space in a lot of places. But I asked the driver who was driving us around, a friend, because I thought, okay, I'm away, I'm detached, but I asked him to tell me what has improved in the last 12 years. And he said, Saddam is gone. And I said, okay, that's fine, we know that. And he said, I can go, you know, go on the internet. I said, okay, that's great. Other than that, and he said nothing. So it's a very simple anecdote, but it says a lot about what has happened. But the city, I mean, it's challenging for me as a writer and a poet, because I was always against Saddam Hussein, and I'm against this facile nostalgia that we oftentimes fall into and have. But nostalgia is also a critique of the present. And the saddest thing for me is, for example, that the street that I lived on, it was a microcosm of Iraq in all of its plurality, whether, you know, Sunnis or Shiites or Christians or Mandais. And now our street is all uniform, only one group of Iraq, and it's controlled by one of these militias. And it's so now I think the urgency or the challenge is for me, thinking of younger Iraqis and future generations, is how to remember the past and deploy it in trying to salvage this idea of a viable Iraq, where people live as citizens and don't live as groups of militias that will fight forever. So, but I mean, you touched on that chord, and this is what my last novel, Ave Maria, is about. Two main characters, a man in his 70s who had lived through modern Iraq and realizes, as you said, in a way that, or he thinks that all of this is these are just passing clouds, and then the
financial wars, military wars, but also a war on memory. They don't want you to remember. They don't want us to remember. They want things to be forgotten. And so the bulk of the discussion is around the present, as if the present could exist without a past. And this is a disease I call presentism.
Exactly, or as if the present, they project, you know, 1400 years backwards.
Exactly.
The present, which, you know, the present has its own history. And definitely, I mean, that is very, very important. And to me, the most worrying thing in general, everywhere, but specifically in places like Iraq and Syria, is the danger of collective amnesia. I mean, I'm always wary of organized memory, but I think the challenge that we have in Iraq and Syria is that when you have these hundreds of thousands of kids who are not even getting an education, or they don't have now, there's this chaos of identity, and they are all prey for these sectarian identities because they do not have access to a national knowledge and a national history. National not in the negative sense, but a collective history that is larger than these new discourses and new movements. So I'm with you. I mean, I'm usually very pessimistic,
No, me too at the present
You're
time.
forcing me to be a bit optimistic.
Well, let's hope that these dark, permanent clouds are in fact passing clouds.
I hope so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Desde nuestra plataforma en inglés, Telesur trae a su pantalla entrevistas en profundidad con personalidades del acontecer político y social. Lunes, from Washington. Martes, from Caracas. Miércoles, from Habana. Jueves, from México. Viernes, from Quito. De lunes a viernes, solo por Telesur, la señal informativa de América Latina.
Earlier this year, shortly after the neo-Nazi murderer Dylan Roof had shot up a black church, the Washington Post reported on a stunning fact. By 24th of July, 204 days of the year had passed, and there had been one mass shooting in the US for each day of the year. A mass shooting, for the record, is one in which 4 or more people are shot. These shootings, it reports, have become so common that they typically don't even make national news. CNN, meanwhile, provided a list of the 27 deadliest mass shootings in US history. Almost all had taken place in the last 30 years, and just over half had taken place in the last 10 years. The Scientific American reports that the US is 5th in all OECD nations for homicide and has hosted half of the worst massacres carried out in the world in the last 30 years. What's more, the nature of the shootings suggests that America suffers from a more deranged type of violence, in that in a study of school shootings in 38 countries, the US accounted for just one less such shooting than all of the other countries put together. What is the cause of these massacres? While most people had picked up on the fact that Dylan Roof was a pro-Confederate racist killer in the tradition of white supremacist terror in the US, President Obama had focused on gun control laws, calling it the greatest frustration of his presidency, as reported by the BBC. 13 Democratic Party politicians are organizing the backing chorus for Obama on this question, and that focus is supported by the liberal wing of the intelligentsia. As Farid Zakaria argues in the Washington Post, America has had 150,000 gun deaths since 9/11 and done nothing about it. On the liberal end of the media, the focus is almost entirely on gun control. The New York Times and the Washington Post have traditionally editorialized in favor of gun control laws, while the progressive left magazine Mother Jones claims a correlation between the number of guns owned and the number of homicides. But nor is it just liberals. While the debate in America is generally structured between a liberal gun control consensus on the one hand and the right-wing National Rifle Association lobby on the other, the New York Times reports that the far right-wing Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal has come out for gun control. On the right, the National Review blames the massacres on an American psychosis, and particularly the absence of treatment for the mentally ill. But it presents no evidence that this is the cause of such massacres. Is there a link between mental health and gun violence? Asked the New Yorker. The short answer is no. The longer answer is mental health is too complex a concept to give us a clear answer to that question. Fox News doesn't even bother with this argument. Instead, it brings us the vital news that Toby Keith doesn't think stricter gun control laws will prevent mass shootings. And if the argument is put like that, the liberals are losing. Most Americans, according to the polling company Gallup, seem to believe that guns make them safer. Less than half of them support further gun controls. But what if gun control laws aren't by themselves the issue? The Washington Post reports that household gun ownership is in terminal decline in America. What's more, while some studies find a correlation between gun ownership and homicide rates, as reported, for example, in this New York Times article, it is not straightforward. For example, when the Post reports the global comparisons, it is true that America has both the highest rate of gun ownership in the world and the highest per capita rate of gun homicide. The correlation is not that straightforward in other countries. In Russia, for example, which is one of the highest homicide rates, but also one of the lower rates of civilian gun ownership. And despite the growing number of individual mass shootings, CNN reports that gun-related homicides and crimes are strikingly down from 20 years ago, just like most other crimes. In 2012, the Washington Post posed the question itself: why are mass shootings becoming more common? The answer? It didn't have one. The Post speculated that perhaps media attention to these massacres creates a copycat scenario and suggests a possible link to mental health. But it ultimately admitted that it's not entirely clear why massacres are on the rise. This suggests that in the media debate between a right wing determined to defend gun ownership and a liberal wing determined to blame gun ownership, both sides of the debate are banging their heads against a brick wall. There are a number of deeper issues here which the US media is constitutionally incapable of addressing within its narrow framework of debate. The first is inequality. You have to look to the overseas press, for example, this article in Canada's Globe and Mail, to find the issue addressed at all. And yet, this is what study after study after study finds to be a key cause of violent crime, gun crime included. As this article in the Scientific America summarizes the research, the issue is not lower average incomes or unemployment, but specifically inequality. The second is why there are so many guns. It's easy to blame the National Rifle Association or even the gun lobby, but there is a bigger issue that never comes up when there are mass shootings, and that is what is called the gun belt. That is the belt of munitions industries that stretches from the industrial Northeast to the South to the Western states. Much of the American economy is dependent upon the gun belt. Beginning in the early Cold War, the militarization of the US economy, funded and planned by the Pentagon and a series of related bureaucracies, began to modernize and industrialize the southern and western states and created new layers of workers and professionals dependent upon the production of guns. To its credit, the Washington Post gave some attention to New England's Gun Valley after the Newtown massacre in Connecticut in 2013, but inevitably it ended up narrowing the focus on the gun lobby, an easy target. The harder truth to swallow is that these industries are the creation of the military-industrial complex, which exists not only to project American firepower abroad in Iraq, Afghanistan, Somalia, Haiti, and elsewhere, but also to drive commercial success. The problems of inequality and the militarization of the American economy then become tangled up with one other factor to create a deadly combination. That third factor is social competition. Mark Ames, formerly editor of the Gonzo publication Exiled, cited this and the culture of sadistic bullying in schools and workplaces that goes with it to explain the spread of mass shootings in the US. And this seems to be supported in studies. As Eric Michael Johnson, summarizing recent research, writes for the Huffington Post, one of the major factors in explaining homicide is the prevalence of competitive as opposed to cooperative behavior. In those areas where community cooperation breaks down and the neoliberal culture of vicious competition takes over, violent crime rates go up, and so does gun ownership. Take these factors in a society with long-standing traditions of racist and sexist violence, and you get Dylan Roof and Elliot Rogers. Given the complex realities of gun ownership, which aren't dealt with in the media, it is unsurprising that there are some dissidents. Some progressives dissent from the gun control argument. Alex Gurovich, writing for the liberal magazine Salon, for example, argues that gun controls without racial justice will rebound badly on black communities in the US, since gun control laws, just like drug laws, are often used as a pretext for police harassment of African Americans. And indeed, The Atlantic points out in its Secret History of Guns that the emergence of modern gun control laws have a lot to do with controlling Black people, from the slavery to the Reconstruction to the Black Panthers. In this, the dissenting liberals are supported by the libertarian magazine Reason, which argues that gun control is the Klan's favorite law. Yet there are some complexities that this argument can't deal with. Household gun ownership today is not a prerogative of the poor, but increasingly has a correlation with property. As this infographic on Marketplace shows, gun ownership is concentrated among those with middle to higher incomes. Research cited by Newsweek shows that in the period from 2010 to 2014, household firearms ownership was higher among households with white respondents than among those with Black respondents. Similarly, it was greater among non-Hispanics than among Hispanics. The research also found that gun ownership was higher among respondents in households with higher incomes. It is not poor Black people who have amassed the guns in this era, it is comparatively wealthy white people. It is not surprising, therefore, that, as Adam Winkler writes for the Daily Beast, the most forceful advocates of the abolition of gun control laws are the Tea Party right, endorsed by the ultra-right wing Gun Owners of America. A number of states with Tea Party representatives have already passed laws drawing on the old segregationist doctrine of states' rights, saying that the federal government's gun control laws are not legally binding. As Winkler argues, among the middle-class homeowners who simply want the right to own guns in order to shoot at trespassers, there is a far-right insurgency brewing linked to the racist militia movement. When it comes to guns, they're talking about a revolution. What's more, there are permissive gun control laws such as stand your ground legislation, which have driven up the homicide rate and often resulted in racist murders such as that of Trayvon Martin. And there is another problem. Even if gun ownership isn't by itself to blame for the spate of massacres in the US, there's no evidence that gun ownership actually helps anyone. In fact, the Washington Post reports on a recent study into what happens when regular people try to use handguns. The results are often dangerous, they don't know what they're doing, and they shoot some innocent bystander. Yet the problem is that for most of the American media, it's very difficult to have a serious discussion about guns, because they're far more focused on blaming guns or excusing guns than on asking, why does a society need this many guns, and where do all these mass shootings come from?
Documentales Telesur presenta.
La política es la herramienta de transformación social y es la única herramienta posible para transformar la sociedad.
Entendiendo que la única manera de cambiar la realidad es desde los espacios de poder.
El espíritu transformador del rol protagónico de la mujer en la política.
Trabajar con los hombres, no trabajar en el cuarto de al lado mientras los hombres toman decisiones al costado, y como las mujeres están en el cuarto de al lado, ni siquiera son visibilizadas.
La otra mirada, firmes convicciones que equilibran la construcción de una sociedad. Historias de coraje, mujeres políticas argentinas. Hoy, solo por Telesur.
Marker et Pasolini, c'était dans les années 60.
Exactement. Marker, il a terminé le film en 60, mais il a filmé, je crois, 58, 59.
D'accord.
Et moi, je me souviens, mais comme vraiment un enfant de 6-7 ans comme ça, je me souviens qu'ils ont dit dans le quartier, il y a un monsieur qui est venu filmer. Et en effet, j'ai retrouvé un voisin dans le film.
Ah, tiens.
Voilà. Alors, tandis que Pasolini, il est venu, je crois, en 63.
Pour faire
le repérage. Parce que moi, je les ai découverts pendant que j'étais étudiant. Même plus tard, le Pasolini plus tard. Même par contre, j'ai découvert un autre film à l'époque quand j'étais étudiant qui m'a beaucoup intéressé de Pasolini, c'est Carnet de notes pour une Orestie africaine.
Oui, d'accord, oui.
C'est un très très grand film. Vraiment, c'est une réflexion splendide sur le colonialisme, le post-colonialisme et le rapport, la difficulté de construire un État moderne. Il le pose terriblement bien, c'est magnifique.
Questa scuola è una scuola molto moderna, come vedete, nei pressi di Kigoma. Si chiama Livingstone perché vicino al posto di Livingstone si è incontrato con Stanley. Allora voi avete visto degli appunti, delle note di viaggio che mi sono servite a bloccare alcune situazioni, alcuni personaggi di quello che dovrebbe essere il mio film sull'Orestiade. Prima di tutto vorrei dirvi perché ho deciso di fare l'Orestiade di Eschilo nell'Africa di oggi. La ragione essenziale, profonda è questa, che mi sembra di riconoscere delle analogie fra la situazione dell'Orestiade et quella dell'Africa di oggi.
Je voudrais, à propos de ce film, rappeler d'abord à son auteur qu'il ne faudra pas trop crier sur l'histoire du tribalisme en Afrique. Parce que les Européens, en général, ont trop crié sur le tribalisme pour commettre un forfait. On parle du Nigeria, on parle des Nigériens et non du Biafra. Parce que lorsqu'on parle d'Italie, on parle des Italiens.
Sì, è molto interessante quello che lei dice, ma allora voglio fare un'osservazione. Chi è che ha fatto i confini del Congo o della Nigeria? Li hanno fatti i colonialisti. E allora la realtà nigeriana è una realtà falsa, fatta a tavolino dai padroni europei.
Un petit peu comme ce qu'il se rend compte avec le...
Avec l'évangile selon Saint Matthieu.
Qui ne va pas trouver ce qu'il cherche, qu'il cherche un idéal spirituel et esthétique.
Surtout esthétique, parce qu'il va se rendre compte, par exemple, par rapport à la Palestine, c'est évident, je crois, parce que comme on n'a pas beaucoup des éléments, par contre, il a écrit un recueil de poèmes.
Oui,
Mais dans lesquels, simplement, il dit, voilà, il y a l'archaïsme qui est présenté par des gens vrais, des gens des prolétariats mondiaux, donc, qui sont les Palestiniens, et puis il y a une force moderne, bon, comme nous, colonialistes, et qui est en train de détruire ce monde. Voilà, donc ça ne l'intéressait pas, et puis il s'est rendu compte que, bon, de toute façon, la religion, c'est une sorte d'imaginaire.
Oui.
C'est ça qui est important chez Pasolini. Et ce qui est important aussi, c'est que, même parce que le film est fait en bonne partie, il est accompagné avec un curé, le prêtre Andrea, voilà, qui est un Italien, qui lui, il est dans l'idéologie.
Oui, d'accord.
Et avec le mépris des indigènes, entre guillemets.
Un'enorme maceria. Ecco come il mondo arabo, sottoproletario Israele. Di cosa chiacchieravamo qui, Don Andrea e io? Ma probabilmente una delle solite discussioni in cui io tendevo a vedere il mondo del tempo di Cristo un po' come quello che mi appariva davanti agli occhi qui intorno. Un mondo piuttosto miserabile, pastorale, arcaico, frantumato. Mentre Don Andrea tendeva sempre a vedere, anche nell'ambiente che circondava Cristo, una certa dignità, probabilmente la dignità quale appare a noi nel mondo moderno. E non sempre eravamo d'accordo su questo punto. Insomma, io tendevo a vedere i villaggi come sono questi qui, villaggi di gente miserrima.
Presque, il nous colle, presque, c'est-à-dire c'est des parasites dans l'image idyllique.
Pasolini n'est pas du tout comme ça.
Absolument
Il est complètement ouvert à tout le monde. Il est en train de dire, il trouve pas ce dont il cherchait, mais il n'est pas en train de rejeter ce qu'il retrouve.
Au contraire, il trouve plus d'humanité chez eux.
Absolument,
Voilà.
il s'ouvre à ce qu'il trouve.
Oui, et c'est ça qui est fantastique chez lui. C'est-à-dire, le poète, en plus, il passe par l'interrogation. Il interroge, il s'interroge. Il interroge la religion, il interroge l'histoire, il interroge tout. Alors, tandis que Chris Marker, bon, on a dit que bon, il a interdit de montrer les films, une description d'un combat, etc. Que soi-disant il a renié, etc., etc.
Ah, d'accord.
Mais moi je n'y crois pas. C'est-à-dire pour quelqu'un comme lui, qui fait pour moi une faute humaine, idéologique, politique, grave, surtout quelqu'un qui a fait Lettres de Sibérie. Par exemple, dans Lettres de Sibérie, les 4 commentaires des mêmes images, c'est fabuleux, disons, montrent que quelqu'un qui réfléchit.
While recording these images of the Yakutsk capital as objectively as possible, I frankly wondered whom they would satisfy. Because, of course, you can't describe the Soviet Union as anything but the workers' paradise, or as hell on earth. For example, Yakutsk, capital of the Yakutsk Autonomous Soviet Socialistic Republic, is a modern city in which comfortable buses made available to the population share the streets with powerful Zims, the pride of the Soviet automobile industry. In the joyful spirit of socialist emulation, happy Soviet workers, among them this picturesque denizen of the Arctic reaches, apply themselves to making Yakutsk an even better place to live. Or else, Yakutsk is a dark city with an evil reputation. The population is crammed into blood-colored buses, while the members of the privileged caste brazenly display the luxury of their Zims, a costly and uncomfortable car at best. Bending to the task like slaves, the miserable Soviet workers, among them the sinister-looking Asiatic, apply themselves to the primitive labor of grading with a drag beam. Or simply, in Yakutsk, where modern houses are gradually replacing the dark, older sections, a bus less crowded than its London or New York equivalent at rush hour passes a Zim, an excellent car reserved for public utilities departments on account of its scarcity. With courage and tenacity under extremely difficult conditions, Soviet workers, among them this Yakut afflicted with an eye disorder, apply themselves to improving the appearance of their city.
Alors, tandis qu'ici, il n'interroge rien. Il n'interroge rien. C'est-à-dire vraiment, d'ailleurs, si vous entrez dans le site en cherchant, pas dans le site, dans Internet, Google, et vous cherchez description d'un combat, vous allez tomber sur un site de propagande israélien qui le prend comme vraiment un film de propagande pour Israël.
On Saturday night, the kibbutz general meeting takes place. If the kibbutz is a projection of Israel's originality, the kibbutz originality lies in this meeting, where all decisions are being taken by common consent. It is a limited but absolute form of democracy. We all know these men and women don't own a thing in the world. They have no money, no bank accounts, no salaries. All their needs are met by the community, and their children are raised and educated collectively. But all these unique aspects of kibbutz life are founded on this weekly exercise in homespun utopia.
Donc, il s'est quand même... On pourrait dire que c'est pas une réflexion juste de son œuvre après qu'il a, comme vous dites, il a interrogé les images et notre rapport aux images après, mais le fait qu'il ne le fait pas du tout, c'est assez choquant.
Voilà, exactement.
Ça ne correspond pas à notre idée de Chris Marker.
Exactement.
Après.
Et Yal Sivan, qui est un réalisateur avec qui je fais la route 181, et lui, il m'a dit, il n'y a pas longtemps, il y a 2 mois à Genève, Il m'a dit qu'il n'a jamais renié, mais il ne voulait pas salir son image. Mais lui, il est resté pro-israélien.
D'accord, ouais.
Mais bon, au-delà de lui comme individu, mais c'est la gauche européenne qui est comme ça.
Parce qu'aujourd'hui, les gens qu'il voit aujourd'hui, on pourrait en trouver beaucoup qui sont d'accord avec ce qu'il dit.
Mais je pense...
Ouais.
Mais,
ça représente
Hollande, Blair...
Voilà, absolument. La gauche bien pensante, ça reflète, même que ce soit fait dans la fin des années 50, ça reflète une pensée prédominante.
Oui, voilà. Voilà, mais alors moi je voulais voir les sources de ça. Comment quelqu'un qui est laïque, qui fait l'éloge d'un nouveau pays ou État théologique, parce que tout est basé sur la religion, n'est-ce pas? C'est même, c'est-à-dire, si vous voulez, l'exclusion de l'autre, c'est parce qu'ils ne sont pas comme nous. Ils n'ont pas la même religion que nous. Mon identité, c'est ma religion.
There she is, like Israel. We have to understand her, to speak to her, perhaps to remind her at times that injustice on this earth of Israel weighs heavier than elsewhere. For this earth itself is the ransom of injustice. To think also of the threats that surround her, to which she gave no cause.
Donc, pour un laïc, par exemple, en plus des gauches, etc. Enfin bon, donc tout d'un coup, moi, c'est ça qui m'intéressait.
Et puis avec votre fille, avec Maloul, donc
qui remet les choses à leur place. Et puis, mais au fond, si vous voulez, je voulais dire que l'origine de violence maintenant, c'est le point de départ là. C'est la destruction de Maloul. Et c'est tout. Donc, si vous voulez, maintenant, bon, il faut regarder l'avenir. Mais l'avenir ne sera absolument pas pacifiste si nous n'avons pas tous les mêmes droits et les mêmes responsabilités face à la citoyenneté, disons, de ce monde. Parce que le monde devient de plus en plus petit. Nous sommes en train de détruire ce monde, détruire la nature. Le capitalisme est sauvage de plus en plus, il s'en fout complètement. Et voilà, moi je trouve qu'on est dans l'impasse. Et la Palestine, c'est une métaphore de ce monde.
Oui, voilà. Merci.
Merci pour toi.
Úsalos y gana. Realiza pagos, transferencias y depósitos a través de los canales electrónicos de la banca pública y acumula cupones que te permitirán ganar mensualmente uno de los 20 vehículos 0 kilómetros o de los 700 bonos de 10.000 bolívares que tenemos para ti. Busca más información en las páginas web de los bancos Venezuela, Bicentenario y Tesoro. Promoción válida hasta el 31 de diciembre de 2015.
Hablemos en serio, hablemos en juego. Nos hace reír, nos hace pensar y hasta rezar. La falta, los tiempos, las hazañas, ¿qué hay detrás de todo esto? El mejor análisis, destacadas jugadas, todo lo que tenga que ver con la previa del fin de semana, el resumen deportivo, las mejores noticias en un espacio que usted estaba esperando. Acompáñenos.
En Juego desde Telesur, todos los sábados y domingos, solo por Telesur.
Vivimos en un país que se levanta con el sol para trabajar con optimismo, que deposita en el café de la mañana los buenos días y las energías, que sabe que sus activos están resguardados en las manos que no se cansan de producir alegrías, que capitaliza la unión para reducir las dificultades. Vivimos en un país que produce para alcanzar un futuro mejor, porque ese es nuestro principal interés. Una década informando sobre el acontecer mundial. Una década reproduciendo las voces de los que luchan. Una década acercando a los pueblos de América Latina, Telesur. 10º aniversario. Nuestro norte es el sur.
La mujer ha sido protagonista desde el nacimiento de la patria en todas partes. Las mujeres que tuvieron no solamente un rol en la cultura o en las letras, sino también en la política, y que reflejan también las historias de mayorías y minorías.
Okay. Quiet for 5 seconds. Okay, next please.
I'm a former death squad commander for the former GOL, the governor of Liberia, under the former president Charles G. Taylor. I'm a former death squad special aide to the ex-president. He's now in the Netherlands.
Okay, quiet for 5 seconds. Okay, thanks.
I started war in 1990. I was 15 years old by that time. Today now, I'm what? I'm 32 years of age right now. I haven't done nothing in life. My future is poor. Now we're cleaning the beach to get 1 or 2 cents to feed our family.
A whole lot of stuff went on here. From people houses got burned, they destroy a whole lot of things here.
Why you must stay now as a journalist? This all is a cemetery during the 1990s period. You can ask any other person in this town, they're going to tell you to fight this beach. You see now we clean. People bring people, kill you, bury you on the beach.
I want to thank God. I want to thank God because I'm one of the survivors from the war. So I can tell you from the start of the war to the beginning, I can explain all to you. Because I live here, and I struggle here, and I walk through the blood, I walk through the human beings, I walk through the bullet, I walk through the fire, I walk through everything here. The suppressor, they kill our people, they kill our family. We kill our family, we are mad about it. The war was a nasty war. It was a bloody war. It was a stupid war. It was a crazy war. The whole war was crazy.
Yes.
It was crazy. Yes. It was crazy. I want to thank Omio. I thank Liberia. I thank God for peace. I'm enjoying peace.
Welcome, Leo, to Liberia.
子供の後ろ姿のショットがある。これにつなげるものは何だろう。プランテーションの中にいるのと街の中にいるのと子供たちにとってどちらがいいのか前から考えていた。まだプランテーションの方を見ていないから何とも言うことができない。ファイアストーンでは1日目からいきなり警備に捕まる。金曜日にもう一度中に入れないか試してみようと思う。
This is Mr. Bue.
Yeah. Real.
Nice. This is Patrick.
Thank you. Is he?
I mean, not Patrick, but Rio.
Rio. Okay, I'm Mr. Boy. Okay, Chairman of the Consultancy Movement. Okay, I have a project officer. He's an artist. Okay, we have a lot of monitors in our areas. I want you to get closer.
Nobody working with Firestone will want to risk their job to provide some of the information you will want. You'll be fired. Yes.
Yeah, unemployment is like 85% in the entire country. So not to risk that job when you ask them, and then they tell you no, it's just better to leave it at no. They have alerted the entire plantation about, especially journalists who come here.
Yeah, go ahead. Go.
Why soon security has the right to arrest and to search any person in the plantation.
You sure there's no security there? Yeah.
Yes, the international journalist are here, and you do some recording.
My name is Rio.
You are welcome.
Thank you.
Okay.
Nice meeting.
20, 60, 80. You're listening to the BBC World Service, and I'm Julian Warwicker with The World Today. Just on the issue, briefly, of regulation. Is it right to step in and say there are only certain things that you can do as a banking industry before we stop you?
I think it's perfectly legitimate. We're in a financial crisis, the like of which we haven't seen since probably the late 20s. But I think, there's a huge moral to this tale, because just worth remembering quite how irresponsible some of the banking sector was when they were lending on.
How many people live here? Something like 12 persons, 12 person.
Yeah.
How long you been on plantation?
For me?
How long?
I was born in Firestone.
You were born in Firestone.
My father worked for Firestone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe we can talk about that tomorrow too.
Yeah.
It's too dark here.
Yeah.
This is a latex tree. We are dealing here with the natural rubber.
So when did you learn about tapping?
When?
Yeah.
My father was tapping here, so I learned about tapping some way back in the.
So you were helping as a kid?
Yes. Yeah, during the war, we left this place. We left this plantation for some 7 years.
But during the war, you have to escape, right?
Yes.
What about now? Do you want to leave this place?
I'm working. How do I leave? I cannot leave a place where I'm working. Yeah.
Well, you can quit the work and leave, right?
Quit the work?
So where's your mission now?
I heard Hopper's work was very hard. And you guys not getting paid as much as you should?
They work hard, the money is small.
Very small?
Yeah.
You work every day?
Yeah.
Monday to Sunday?
Mm-hmm.
No day off?
No day off. Sunday through off.
Do you have any day off within a year?
No day off, no the Christmas. That the day all day.
Only Christmas.
Yeah.
So you're not employee of Firestone?
No, I help her.
You help?
I help him my father. Yeah, I help him my pa.
How old are you?
Our boy is 62.
62.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so bongal agatigai ngabo e arega kwa mi ako ko pana e arega kwa mi heba ko yinga de ko luni da ya ko ninga ba do ba no pa lo ba no nga ko bi kwai ba nga ko ma te bu na ba ga kai mu ba kwe ko de ni ala oni we ni kan o me tiro ko da
Did you know the press is the only industry specifically mentioned in the Constitution? That's because a free and open press is critical to our democracy. In fact, the single biggest threat facing our nation today is the corporate takeover of our government and our press. We've been hijacked by a handful of powerful transnational corporations that will profit by destroying what our founding fathers once built up. I'm Tom Hartman, and on this show, we reveal the big picture of what's actually going on in the world. We go beyond identifying the problem. We try to fix it. Rational debate and a real discussion of the critical issues facing America. Ready to join the movement? Then welcome to the big picture.
What do you think about sanctions?
Easy, right or wrong, but I definitely think sanctions are better than conflict.
You don't perform for diplomatic reasons. You perform for humanitarian ways. I'm talking obviously about Edward Snowden.
I believe he's a hero. I believe he's coming directly from his heart.
Kaiser Report Special Edition, where we ask, why not? Why not try some of the most unthinkable ideas to get us out of our current economic, financial, and cultural cul-de-sac?
Vlieg met de fik!
Sit down, bro.
Ôi. Mình ốp xuống.
Fellow workers, the die is now finally cast over us. From generation to generation, we continue to face the same problem. Firestone is not leaving this country. She will never leave. With the millions and billions of dollars of investment, she will never leave. And we must tell her that the millions and billions of dollars that she continues to accumulate on a daily basis from this soil is because of our sweat. Yes. And we must enjoy that sweat. There is dignity in labor. Right? We cannot live and live in poverty. Yes. Because what we are doing here today is the foundation we are laying for our children. Should we continue to lose? No. Should we continue to lose? No. I'm telling you, there's no more time for losing. There's no more time for losing. We must fight ahead. We must fight ahead.
Our Lord, our God, thank you for bringing your children together. Father, thank you for protecting our brother who is among us, a journalist. We pray that whatsoever he came to search for, you protect him, that he will be able to accomplish his mission, that will seek freedom and justice for the children on his farm. Be with us in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
ここでかき集めた映像が頭の中に浮かび続けている。それらの間にある関係を理解するにはまだ時間がかかりそうだ。
This is where Firestone process for rubber for shipment out of the country. Today, the river is dead because of the Firestone pollution. The area has been deserted. Others are still here because they don't have the income, they don't have US dollar to go and buy land elsewhere. There is no way to go, or there is nowhere to go, so they will die here. They put their waste into the river 24 hours daily. I thank God that they took you to the site and today you are here.
Bye, right?
Yeah.
Why don't you guys look at yourself now?
自分ではコントロールできない状況に置かれたとき、自分の思考が止まったときがあったような気がする。自分の準備の甘さやナイーブなところに腹が立つ。学ぶことがまだ山ほどある。今自分に何ができるか。自分が残すもの。これから向かっていくもの。この日記は2007年に村上亮が初めてリベリアに旅した時に書かれたものです。その後6年間の間に彼は幾度となくプランテーションに旅立ちました。2013年春の撮影の際に重度のマラリアに感染し、ニューヨークに戻ってきてから4週間後に彼はこの世を去りました。村上亮が撮影した映像はファイアストーンのプランテーション内の生活を収めた数少ない映像の一つとして貴重な資料となっています。
Crosstalk rules in effect. That means you can jump in anytime you want.
Bankers, politicians, largely the media, turn a blind eye.
They are disorganized. They look.
What are they protesting? Nobody seems to know.
Take a shower and they can get a job.
The international Emmys are coming up. RT has been nominated. Demands are heard. Cause a change in their system. Extremely heavy-handed police response.
Where is that country called Russia? No one has ever heard about that country. Never even have heard about Moscow.
Ecuador, a small country on the west coast of South America. Ecuador is home to a vast variety of animal and plant species.
European or North American companies behave more or less responsibly in their own countries. More or less, they respect the technical parameters and laws. But when these companies go to Africa or Latin America, it's a disaster.
We've seen many pipe leaks, contamination and destruction. There are areas that have become uninhabitable for people. We're suffering from numerous diseases. We've seen people die.
Sailed across the North Sea. We sailed halfway over from Dover. That's John, St. Roger and me.
Away the drops, away the drops, away waiting for some more. Away they came, I wanna say.
I need to have your documents on the board.
Yes, it's all right. Yeah, I'm coming to your office. Is it all right?
Okay.
The latest news and the week's top stories. Days of fierce fighting culminate in the Taliban making gains in Afghanistan's Helmand province, with reports that the strategic town of Sangin has fallen to the insurgents.
What you're about to see is a testament to the brutality and ferocity of the Syrian civil war. Every house, every street, every block is bitterly contested and fought over.
RT visits a crucial battlefield in the war-torn Syrian capital of Damascus. And crowds defy demonstration bans in Corsica as anti-Arab rallies are held for a third day. World news around the clock. This is RT International. Warm welcome to the programme from me, Colin Bray. This week, the Taliban have been on the offensive in South Afghanistan, taking control of major areas in the opium-rich Helmand province. Afghan officials claim the fight is still ongoing amid reports that the key town of Sangin has fallen to the Taliban.
Your Excellency, Facebook is not the right forum for speaking with you, but as my voice hasn't been heard by you, I don't know what else to do. Please, save Helmand from tragedy.
The fighting is ongoing in Sangin. There is no doubt about that. There is the military is in their position.
Most of the areas of Sangin district is now under the Taliban control.
Afghanistan's seen a Taliban resurgence after last year's withdrawal of US-led international combat troops. Dozens of people have been killed in recent raids, leading to the capture of some key cities. Casualties in the Afghan military have soared by 27%. Kabul-based political analyst Abdullah Haiwad says NATO's left an opening for banditry in the country.
The Americans and the international community, the Western countries, they left, they abandoned Afghanistan immediately after, the things heated up in Iraq and in Syria. These are the problems we are facing in Afghanistan today. It is definitely, the less attention of Western countries to Afghanistan.
The days of fierce fighting in Helmand province come right after US Defense Secretary Ashton Carter visited the country to review security. While the Taliban tightens its grip in Afghanistan, Islamic State has also been thriving on political turmoil and power vacuums in the Middle East and in Africa. Libya's recently suffered an increased ISIL presence around its stronghold in Sirte. The jihadist group boasted the launch of its own so-called police force in the coastal city. This video purports to demonstrate the terrorists' grip on the region. Islamic State's also fighting for control of the eastern city of Ajdabir, which would allow ISIL access to Libya's largest oil field. In fact, it's now trying to seize territories all along the entire Libyan coast. Western jets have been on standby at bases across the Mediterranean, but neither of Libya's two governments, either the official authority that's in Tobruk at the moment or the self-proclaimed one that's in Tripoli, are willing to allow any foreign intervention.
It was Western interference, of course, that led to the ousting and killing of Libya's former leader, Muammar Gaddafi, in 2011. The country struggled to find stability ever since.
We are not getting, for the time being, any support, any tangible support, except for some visits that we have had so far. Our realistic hope for the new year is to get tangible support from the international community once the government of national accord is set up. Indeed, what has lacked in Libya has been the insecurity and the lack of the establishment of the state grip on our territories, so that we have had the growing presence of Daesh.
Turkish lawyers are taking the government to court after a documentary sparked a public outcry with allegations their hometown was becoming a hub for ISIL's slave trade. We've got more on that later this hour. The Syrian conflict shows no sign of abating, with the army stepping up its campaign against Islamists across the country. Militants have been pushed out of a number of areas in the provinces of Aleppo and also Latakia. While in the capital, Damascus, fierce fighting continues between the army and the rebels. Some areas there have been contested for almost 3 years. RT's Murad Gazdiev reports.
Jobar, the closest battleground to Damascus. What you're about to see is a testament to the brutality and ferocity of the Syrian civil war. Every house, every street, every block is bitterly contested and fought over. Often, when the dust settles, there's not a lot left of whatever it is that was won. And this is happening on a nationwide scale. And for Islamist rebels, Jobar is the key to the city.
Jobar is incredibly important for them. Through here, they keep trying to break into Damascus, which they also regularly shell from here.
The state of it should make clear how much blood both sides have shed for this district. Getting around Jobar is a challenge in and of itself. You can never tell what piece of rubble or what window a sniper might be hiding in. So a lot of the movement around here happens through places like these, through trenches and tunnels which dot the city. Every so often, we'd come across a bunker. Inside, Syrian troops kept vigil and exchanged small arms fire with rebels.
This is the main street, and we have to watch for vehicles and car bombs so they don't blow up near us.
While war and fighting rage in Jobar itself, it's also happening underground. Wherever rebels go, they dig massive tunnel networks like this one. This is just one entrance. Dozens and dozens around Jobar itself. And of course, it complicates street fighting even further, because the Syrian military has to clear vast, really vast tunnel networks like these, and they stretch for hundreds and hundreds of kilometers below ground. Streets and even individual houses, we're told, are held by Islamist groups of various flavors. What complicates any effort to drive them out is the cramped space. While there are plenty of vehicles, heavy armor like this tank, it is a liability in urban warfare, urban combat, because space is so limited and attackers could be hiding anywhere. So the tanks are parked here, seeing little action. Nevertheless, recent government gains have forced rebels to pull up to 1,000 fighters out of Juba to reinforce other areas. Rebels say they won't give up their only foothold in the capital, especially considering that the fate of Damascus may well be decided in this scarred ruin. Morad Gazdiev, RT, from Juba, Syria.
It's been alleged that former US Army top brass covertly supplied intelligence to the Syrian president. They transferred it via other states to help Assad's army against the jihadists, but without the knowledge of the White House. That's all according to investigative journalist and New Yorker magazine contributor Seymour Hersh. And among his sources, he includes the former director of the US Defense Intelligence Agency. Pentagon officials refute the allegations as being completely false, so we spoke to the author.
It is pretty amazing when a group of generals say to themselves, I don't know why this guy is listening to us. I don't know what we're going to do about it, but we have to do something about it. They were acting on behalf of what they thought the country should be doing. And so that was the leverage they used, I think, to make this extraordinary decision that they're going to work with other people to help out, or at least to give Bashar the intelligence he needs to survive. Why we would want in the United States for Bashar not to survive, given the consequences of having, let's say, the Islamic State or al-Nusra or groups allied with them, with the same point of view, run a country with bordering on Iran and Israel. I mean, my God, that would be a formula for complete chaos, as we have in Libya. It just makes no sense. I mean, come on. They know that these groups, that they're at least at some level, they understand that the groups they insist are so moderate have a lot of ties. You can't exist without being in league with al-Nusra or the Islamic State. You know, actually, the article is really not about what I'm saying. It's about what the military said. It's about a bunch of generals just feeling confounded about the fact that they're reporting all this stuff. There's no moderates. The moderates don't really exist. That you have to deal with Russia. Actually, if I'm Putin looking at it, I'm thinking, we're supposed to be in the same bed in terms of fighting international terrorism. We're all secular countries who believe in freedom of religion. And here we are. The United States has done what since 9/11? They've knocked off a secular guy in Iraq. They've knocked off a secular guy in Libya, and they're trying their best to make trouble for a secular guy in Syria.
The French Mediterranean island of Corsica has seen a third day of anti-Arab protests in its capital. There have been reports of fireworks being thrown at riot police. Hundreds of people took to the streets in defiance of a ban on demonstrations that was imposed on Sunday, which applies to a predominantly Muslim neighborhood plagued by violence recently. The ban will remain in place until January the 4th. A march attended by hundreds on Saturday saw anti-Arab chants and vandalism in the streets. The demonstrators are angry over what they claim is a lack of police response to their concerns regarding alleged attacks by Muslims. Their protests, though, have attracted a large presence of officers. Here's what some of the demonstrators told us.
There is no security in poor areas. If the police won't act, we will continue to go out to solve this problem ourselves. When there are problems in the area, the police do not react because they are afraid. But they have sent a number of detachments there in order to stop us. We were called racists, fascists, and extremists. But this is not about us. We are here. We have law, rights, and culture. We are defending our land, and we don't want any scoundrels in Corsica.
I'm glad the demonstrations are taking place. I was afraid to enter these areas at first, but now I'm happy that we are being heard. But the protests need to be organized properly. They shouldn't spark a greater desire for violence.
Producer for RT's video agency had been filming the protests when a group of masked demonstrators showed up, making demands. Here's what the Rupley producer told us about the incident.
I was filming the demonstration which started in one street that was cordoned off by the police. I'd been filming for several hours and then I found a place out of everyone's way and sat down to edit it. But at that time, a group of people gathered close to me. Some were locals sympathizing with the protesters, and some were the organizers of the protests. And they saw over my shoulder one frame on my screen, which they did not like. A frame showed men in sports clothes and in Guy Fawkes masks, making gestures that the local residents did not like because they thought they resembled a Nazi salute, an extended arm in the air. They asked me to delete these frames because in their opinion they did not represent fairly the current situation on Corsica, and they claimed that I intentionally sought to shoot something like this. I was in fact ready to satisfy their request when one of them tried to grab my laptop and another man pushed me to the roadside. They took my laptop and the person who grabbed it ran away. I talked to the organizers of the protest and my laptop was returned to me 20 minutes later. When I got it back, the SD card with all the recorded material was damaged, but luckily I had had time to copy it to the laptop's drive. I should mention there have been no aggressive actions towards reporters on the part of the demonstrators all day, except this one incident I told you about.
It's been a restive week there. On Thursday, 2 firefighters were injured in an attack. It's still not known who the perpetrators were. On Friday, hundreds gathered in support of the injured firefighters, with many assuming that they'd been attacked by Muslims. Later, a group broke off and stormed a Muslim prayer hall, burning copies of the Quran and smashing windows. Police reinforcements have been sent to the Corsican capital from the mainland, with Paris condemning the recent violence.
Intolerable abuses with signs of racism and xenophobia.
Anti-Islamic sentiment's been on the rise in France since January's Charlie Hebdo terror attack. In the 6 months that followed, the number of offences against Muslims rose by almost a quarter, including attacks on mosques, death threats against women wearing veils, and the humiliation of school children. The terror attacks that hit Paris in November have only worsened the situation. Bruno Dresky from the National Institute of Languages and Eastern Civilizations in Paris said it'll be difficult to deal with the issue given the nationalists' recent political gains.
Situation in Corsica is very bad and there are a lot of tensions there. The problem is how to deal with on one side, the relation between immigrants and local population, and on the other side, the situation between the separatists, which want to have autonomy or independence for Corsica, and the growing also French nationalism. We have to remember that we had regional election just a couple of weeks ago, and the separatists, the nationalists, did won this election.
Turkish law enforcement and intelligence agencies have been sued by a legal firm over allegations ISIL is conducting its slave trade via an office in Turkey. The trade reportedly involves children and women from the Yazidi Kurdish minority who were kidnapped in Syria, as this newly emerged video purports to show. The allegations about Turkey's role were initially put forward in a documentary aired by a major German broadcaster. We spoke to the head of the legal firm that's suing Turkish intelligence.
We decided to file a complaint after the allegations made on German ARD-TV, which they shared on social media. They alleged that Yazidi people were traded by ISIS in a slave market here in Gaziantep. The prosecution must investigate this. If there's evidence and suspects, they must be caught and tried. If there's neglect of duty on the side of the security forces or intelligence, they must be punished.
The documentary focuses on a Kurdish man who acts as a mediator, buying slaves back from ISIL and returning them to their families. The man talks to the terror group on the internet and then negotiates a price. He then heads to Gaziantep, a Turkish city 40 kilometers from the Syrian border. He's shown visiting the alleged ISIL slave trade office. In the film, the man claims he's paid ISIL $2.5 million in the past year to return women and children to their families. Similar claims about Gaziantep being used by terrorists have also been raised by Turkish MPs.
During our observations here, we have shared with the Turkish public that ISIL is moving freely in Gaziantep and that the city has become a support line for them. The presence of thugs coming from all over the world who are able to cross there from here and vice versa, and having the courage to tell the Turkish soldiers that they want to join ISIL means that they have hundreds of contacts here. We reiterate our calls to the authorities that measures have to be taken. In their subconsciousness, the authorities still do not regard ISIL as a terrorist organization and their members as terrorists.
It's estimated that up to 5,000 Yazidi women and girls are currently being held by ISIL as sex slaves. While in captivity, the women are often swapped between militants. Girls as young as 8 are said to be used in the trade. Ankara denies allegations that it turns a blind eye to ISIL's activities across the Syrian border. We spoke to Turkey's representative of the Yazidi Association in Europe.
Gaziantep is today a place where humans are sold. It's like a market. We know that IS members can pass very easily the border. They use the same routes, how they get in and out from Turkey to Syria or to Iraq, to bring also these women and children via this way. Although we cannot say that Turkey is directly involved in the issues, by allowing IS members to get in very easily, we can say in an indirect way they are also supporting IS.
A Dutch family's Christmas trip to the California sunshine got a lot hotter than they bargained for. They were forced to put the pedal to the metal to outrace a fast-spreading wildfire, and you can watch their truly terrifying family video on our website. And we've details of a sugary solution to making dirty water drinkable. US researchers say they found a cheap, speedy method to bring much-needed supplies to the planet's parched countries. Chicago police say one of its officers accidentally shot and killed a mother of 5 after responding to a domestic disturbance. After law enforcers arrived at the scene, they first shot dead a black teenager who was reportedly threatening his father with a bat. A statement released by the authorities said the 19-year-old was deemed a combative subject. The mother of 5 was accidentally struck in that shooting. The 55-year-old woman had been asked to keep an eye out for the officer's arrival, but instead was hit with several bullets. Chicago police have called the shooting a tragic mistake.
Yesterday was just Christmas, and she was dancing around, smiling around, just interacting with us, having a nice time, and then we're supposed to do it again today. And here it is, I get a phone call saying that my mom gone. Hey, I don't understand.
An explosion in a residential building in Cairo has claimed the lives of up to 3 people and injured 11 others. Egyptian media report that a local government official was among those killed. The authorities have stated that the blast was due to a gas leak and have ruled out terrorism. At least 41 bodies have been found in several southern states in the US after the region was hit by a wave of powerful tornadoes. Dozens more have been injured. Texas has been the worst hit, with 11 people killed. Around 600 buildings have been destroyed in the extreme weather. A demonstration descended into clashes between protesters and security forces in southeast Turkey, leaving 2 Kurdish women injured. Hundreds of activists had flooded the streets to protest against curfews imposed in the region. Riot police fired water cannon and tear gas to disperse the crowd. Israeli soldiers have shot dead 2 Palestinian assailants that had stabbed an Israeli serviceman at a West Bank checkpoint. According to reports, the soldiers sustained moderate injuries in the attack. Since September, tensions have spiked, with up to 129 Palestinians and 30 Israelis killed. A New Zealand court ruled on Tuesday that Kim.com, founder of the mega upload file sharing service, can be extradited to the US along with 3 colleagues.
This court finds that the respondents are all eligible for surrender on all 13 counts in the superseding indictment.
What I'd like to say is that this is not the last word on the matter. We have filed an appeal. I'm still on bail, and we'll go through the whole process until the very end.
Kim.com was arrested in New Zealand in 2012, but then released on bail. In the US, he faces multiple charges, including copyright infringement. If extradited to America and found guilty, .com faces up to 20 years in prison. The internet entrepreneur is known not only for mega upload, but also for his activities in promoting online freedom.
The war for the internet has begun. Hollywood is in control of politics. The government is killing innovation. Don't let them get away with that.
The Prime Minister has failed to explain why exactly these greater powers and greater privacy intrusions. Why are you turning red, Prime Minister? I'm not. Why are you sweating? Yeah, it's hot. I'm launching a new political party here in New Zealand, focusing on the digital economy, a digital bill of rights, freedom.
Kim.com's lawyer told RT that the extradition decision is going to have negative consequences for online liberty.
Under the way the court has ruled, almost any ISP, like, say, Dropbox, which is a famous cloud storage provider, can be looked at after the fact. Their servers could be subpoenaed by the government, and they could be cherry-picked to find the infringing uses in a dual-use technology and hold them up to the court, and then take selected conversations about the infringing uses and now say, see, this ISP is bad because they're discussing infringing uses. Now it's left up to the government whether they like you or not, and prosecutorial discretion. That's going to have a terrible chilling effect on ISPs locating in New Zealand and in the United States. It's going to have a terrible chilling effect on free speech, and it's going to lead to copyright extremism.
Coming up next on RT International, Anissa Nawe takes a look back at the biggest stories of 2015 in the Nows after the break.
Very important that we have leadership that is helping to forge a different pathway and to clarify for people, war is not the solution to more failed wars. We need a different path forward. We can stop arming the Middle East. Most of the weapons on all sides are actually coming from the U.S.
Kaiser Report Special Edition, where we ask, why not? Why not try some of the most unthinkable ideas to get us out of our current economic, financial, and cultural cul-de-sacs?
I'm Anissa Nawe in Moscow. Strained, brutal, revealing, awkward, but also fun. The one and only 2015 is in the now. Forget Ukraine, Syria. All eyes, ears, and focus returned. ISIS got out of hand and Russia put its foot down. Terror went too far. France, Tunisia, Kenya, Nigeria, Lebanon, Turkey, Russia, France again. And then California. Refugees, more refugees, floods of refugees, exhausted, soaking wet, desperate, and not welcome. The UN hates 70 years, FIFA corruption, Cyprus wins and loses, no one really cares. Trump against Muslims, immigrants, ISIS, the internet, basically everyone except for himself.
Trump is brilliant. He's great.
And Putin got a little love.
Trump and Putin, Putin and Trump.
Syria, Ukraine, Ukraine, Syria. No, Syria definitely. It stole the thunder, but I just can't get Ukraine out of my mind.
This image broadcast on Syrian state television, identified by analysts as a modern Russian-made armored vehicle.
Amateur video shows alleged Russian battle tank moving into the southern Ukraine.
Really? Did you just swap the countries?
Satellite images show Russia has installed modular units capable of housing hundreds of military personnel.
Commercial satellite imagery made public of Russian forces on the move for the last several days.
I think I know where it comes from.
Concerned about reports about increased Russian military presence in Syria. It is of great concern that we have seen this steady build-up of military presence.
Russia versus the West beat getting old? Not so long ago.
Russia is isolated.
Russia seems to be quite isolated globally.
We will ensure that this isolation deepens. The isolation,
political isolation of Russia.
But 2015 was a step in the right direction. Baby steps.
The world is better off when Russia and the United States find common ground and an ability to be able to work together. We don't seek to isolate Russia.
There is no objective to isolate Russia. It is not a goal to isolate Russia at all.
It was quite a year, to say the least. Let's break it down with Alexei Pushkov. He's head of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Russian Parliament. Thanks for being with us. I think it's fair to say that Russia's strategy in the Middle East has changed during 2015. It was all about Syria. Is Moscow in this for years to come? Because it looks like a mess.
Well, I don't think that the Russian involvement in the Syrian crisis looks like a mess. I think it was a necessity. It is a response for a clear and present danger. I mean, the Islamic State. And I don't have a feeling that Russia had a choice in this situation.
Why did Russia wait so long to get involved in Syria, to warn the world about Turkey, so to say, and ISIS oil ties? Why was 2015 the year to move?
2015 was the year to move because the Islamic State has started to consolidate itself on the territories of Iraq and Syria. 40% of Iraqi territory is controlled by the Islamic State, and the Western coalition has done absolutely nothing to weaken its position. So if Russia did not interfere, there are strong fears that the Islamic State would have taken over Damascus and a large part of Syria. So, as I say, it was a necessity.
Why didn't Russia warn the world about Turkey and its ties to ISIS oil trade earlier?
I think that, as always in politics, there are priorities. In previous time, the scale of the exchange in oil trade between the Islamic State and Turkey first was not fully known to Russia, although there was some information. But also, we had a pretty good relationship with Turkey. So to endanger this relationship by disclosing certain things which could have been embarrassing to the Turkish government, as far as I know, nobody did this. Not the United States, although, of course, they had this information, nor France. And so I think that Russia made this when it started to take a direct part in the operation against the Islamic State, and when it understood that without cutting off the financial resources of the Islamic State, this fight will last for a very long time. Before, Russia was not involved in this area. And when it started to be involved, it has disclosed this information.
Global terror made a very heavy mark throughout the year, starting with Charlie Hebdo, coming full circle in Paris. Of course, over 200 Russians, a plane blown up over Sinai. Has ISIS become a common threat? Because it seems like some would argue not enough so.
Well, ISIS is a common threat, but I don't think that in Western countries there is a full understanding of this threat. 2 days before it became clear that 14 people in California were killed by advocates and basically people who refer themselves to ISIS, Obama made a statement saying that the ISIS does not represent a vital threat to the United States. So I think the understanding is not yet here, although there is an awareness of this threat. But for the time being, I think the West is playing down the real danger.
What was the biggest difference, do you think, in U.S. and Russia ties between 2014 and 2015? What has changed?
I think what has changed is that the United States are forced today to have a dialogue with Russia on Syria. I have to stress that this is basically the only area of international politics today where we do have a dialogue. If we talk about Europe, the United States are on the same track. They try to isolate Russia, and they take sanctions against Russia, like the sanctions were enlarged by the American administration. So I would say that Syria is the area where the United States feel that if they don't engage in dialogue with Russia, they will be sidelined. They may stay at the margins of the military and political processes in Syria.
Speaking about the approach of the Obama administration, what about Ukraine? Has that been forgotten?
No, Ukraine definitely is not forgotten, and Vice President Biden has shown us that Ukraine is still a priority for the U.S. foreign policy. Definitely, Obama does not want to have too much of a personal involvement in this, and he avoids Mr. Poroshenko. But Ukraine will be used, and the United States intend to use it as a kind of bulwark against Russia in Eastern Europe.
You mentioned sanctions, the ruble not looking good. What's your guess for 2016? Is it going to be another rocky year for the Russian currency?
I think 2016 will be not an easy year due to the low prices for oil, due to the European sanctions and the American sanctions. But I also hope that 2016 will be the last year of the European sanctions. There is no rationale for keeping those sanctions. Half of Europe is against it. A large part of the European business is against it. I think that these sanctions may be reconsidered next summer, and I hope that it will be the beginning of the end of this crisis between Russia and the European Union.
All right, Alexei Pushkov, head of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Russian Parliament. Thanks for being in the now, and enjoy your holiday season.
Thank you.
Lifting sanctions, now that would be a gift. Imagine that. Fun. There wasn't a great amount of that in 2015, but we found some frames that focused on the lighter side of things. Politics doesn't always have to be dry. It can make you feel alive, or like you want to fly. And then really important moments, like a rare touch, can be completely comical because of one slight move. And then there's the best, worst moments caught on camera, starting with my personal favorite, when ECB head was interrupted by a special guest.
Being the firm.
Dictatorship! And ECB dictatorship!
Yeah. Okay.
And there's always the darndest thing some politicians say, too.
We're speeding up training of ISIL forces, including volunteers from Sunni tribes.
I call for calm and de-escalation. Diplomacy and de-escalation, calm and de-escalation, de-escalating the situation.
Hitler didn't want to exterminate the Jews at the time. He wanted to expel the Jews.
I said, if you could go back in time and kill baby Hitler, would you? I need to know.
Man, crazy.
Hell yeah, I would.
Plus, sometimes they're just silent.
The response from nearly every one of the governments represented here has been absolutely nothing. Utter silence. Deafening silence. Perhaps you can understand why Israel is not joining you in celebrating this deal.
Got it? Coming up, the CIA made predictions about 2015. We look at what they got right and what they got wrong. Stay in the now.
What do you think about sanctions?
Easy right or wrong, but I definitely think sanctions are better than conflict.
You don't perform for diplomatic reasons. You perform for humanitarian ways. I'm talking obviously about Edward Snowden.
I believe he's a hero. I believe he's coming directly from his heart.
New year, a fresh start, resolutions, promises, and pledges. You know the drill.
I will not pursue, it will not involve, I will seek authorization.
Мы не собираемся, конечно, будем держать, мы будем работать, безусловно, будем.
So are they going to keep their promises?
Of course they are.
Joining us now is Nigel Parsons. He's the CEO of TVC News and the former head of Al Jazeera English. Thanks so much for being with us.
Pleasure.
This year will be remembered, of course, by people depending on the media they watch, see, read, follow. What do you take away from 2015?
2015, migrant crisis.
That's the biggest one for you.
Without doubt, in Western Europe, I think that is the #1 topic.
Why are we seeing less of it in the media as this year comes to an end?
Are we? In the UK, it's in the papers, on the TV every single day, and we are not the most affected country. I mean, I was talking to a Czech politician yesterday, and he says it's still a huge issue in the countries of southeastern Europe and the Balkans. I don't think it's going away.
In Europe, certainly. In global media, if we talk about international coverage, of course, ISIS will be one of the strong points when we look back at 2015. Russia had a very tough year as well. What is it doing wrong?
What is Russia doing wrong?
Yeah.
I think there needs to be a lot more engagement, and I don't think, it's Russia by itself doing wrong. I think actually, there's two kind of superpowers in the world. There has been my entire life, and it's been Russia and America.
They're more similar than we give them credit for, aren't they?
For me, they're kind of mirrors of each other. I know America makes a big play of exporting democracy to the world, but I find their political system quite opaque and, quite corrupt. They have an awful lot of the same sort of values, they seem to, and yet they're always at loggerheads. And you have to wonder whether it's not some Orwellian 1984 game where you have lots of little proxy wars around the world and you keep your own population in fear and make out that the rest of the world hates you, when it's simply not true.
I couldn't agree with you more. In terms of the media, how these two superpowers are portrayed, I agree that they're very similar. Are they portrayed similarly in the global media, at least this year?
I wouldn't say so. I mean, I can only kind of speak for Europe, although I'm running an African channel. Neither of these stories are very big in Africa, actually. But within Europe, obviously, the US has its huge supporters and Russia has its supporters. There's a lot of debate, and I think it's quite balanced. I think the balance gets lost both in Russia and in the US. I mean, when I first came to Russia, I used to watch programs like Kulaki and, lots of satire, and it just doesn't seem to be there anymore. Again, in the US, I go there and I can't find any news about the rest of the world unless you go to a real specialist channel.
What do you think the main challenges for the media was this year and will be coming into 2016?
I think it's striking the right balance. I think the media lost the plot a lot in the Middle East. I was particularly, Iraq, once the decision was made to go to war, although there was huge opposition to it, both in the media and the public, once the decision was made to go to war, the media got behind our boys. In Libya, you had media like Al Jazeera cheering on the Muslim Brotherhood in Libya and in Egypt, and then you had, I have to say, even UK domestic channels being very excited about the end of Gaddafi, and I think it was all a huge mistake. I happened to be working in Libya at the time when NATO started bombing, and I think, what I can't understand is politicians just go on making the same mistakes again and again. It's like Groundhog Day.
What mistakes should politicians learn from the experience in Libya?
Well, they should have learned that one in Iraq, actually.
They didn't, exactly.
I understood why America went to Afghanistan. They just wanted to lash out and have some revenge. And then they kind of, won in Afghanistan, took their eye off the ball, got bored, said, oh, let's have another war in Iraq. Why? I never understood that.
Do you think there's something more to them not learning? And is the media questioning these unlearned lessons?
I think a lot of media are, and certainly there's a lot on social media questioning them. I'm less convinced by some of the mainstream media. And yes, sometimes you have to think, oh, there must be a conspiracy here. It's impossible to make such a mess of things unless you really wanted to. Or maybe they are just stupid. I don't know.
How do you find out what's happening in Syria when there's so many different sources, there's so many different ways to hear a story and so many different stories of what's happening?
That's a very complicated one. A story like Syria, I do tend to look, at different channels who are carrying different viewpoints because, they all have their own agenda. Whether that's the BBC or Al Jazeera, Russia Today, CNN, they all have an agenda. And I think you have to look at all of them and then try and read between the lines because none of them has a monopoly on truth. There's always going to be small groups of people who question everything and who have their own opinions and who aren't fooled. But media is an incredibly powerful tool for misinformation as well as information.
Right. I want to play a game with you. Association.
Yeah, I'm very nervous about this one.
Don't be nervous. One-word answers if possible. 2015.
Migrant crisis.
You've already answered that one. Okay. Breakthrough.
Breakthrough. Doesn't mean anything to me.
Place.
Syria?
Misconception.
Means nothing to me.
Media.
Information wars.
Politics.
30.
Threat.
Syria, ISIS.
Fail.
Politics.
Fact.
Fact. Where are the real facts? I don't know. I can't pass on that one.
Fun.
Diving.
Nigel Parsons, CEO of TVC News, with us in the now, also former head of Al Jazeera English. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Terrorist tactics will become increasingly sophisticated and designed to achieve mass casualties. Yes, the CIA predicted ISIS in 2015, way back in 2000. What else did they get right?
Mass execution of Ethiopian Christians in Libya.
More than 120 people have been killed. New form of terror.
ISIS's aggressive and successful online propaganda campaign.
No common policy ready for the massive push of so many more desperate people.
Flooding into Europe to escape war and poverty on 2 continents.
Suicide bombs, as you mentioned, automatic weapons, grenades. There are still a lot of questions as to how did these men get these weapons?
We're going to build a wall. It's going to be a real wall. Immigration out there amongst ordinary folk has now become a huge negative. People are furious.
Pour l'immigration clandestine, le retour dans leur pays.
So who was the #1 villain of 2015? No, not Putin. Here's Lori Harfenis with all you need to know about Trump. Donald Trump.
Donald Trump is bad. Donald Trump is bad. Year in review style here. Take a look back at 2015. Yeah. Who's the worst guy out there to America?
Donald Trump.
Oh, agreed. What was America's biggest bad guy in 2015?
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump.
Yep.
Worse than anyone on the planet.
Yeah.
Hey, Mr. NYPD car, who do you think America's biggest bad guy of 2015 was?
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump is bad. Donald Trump is bad. So ISIS has not hurt Americans as much as Trump.
No, you're right.
What did he do in 2015 that was worse than ISIS? So many to choose from.
I don't know, a lot of people would say Donald Trump, but I mean, you can't really talk about Donald Trump like that because, I mean, he really didn't do anything very wrong.
A lot of people are saying Trump.
Nope. I'm a Trump supporter.
I'm going to have to say the guy, since I'm from South Carolina, the guy that did the killing in Charleston.
Oh, you mean someone who actually did something bad and not just someone spouting their mouth off? At least we don't know what he's going to do, you know?
That's
we know
right.
exactly what the other ones will.
That's right.
Donald Trump is bad. Donald Trump is bad. Donald Trump is bad.
Ay, yo con la camisa.
It's been a bad year for Christmas. A war was raged this holiday season. One family sued by city officials over a spectacular Christmas light display. The mayor in Florida wanted the show shut down. I guess it was offensive to some. Some went further. School officials in New Hampshire banned the word Christmas from party flyers. The Christmas tree lighting was turned into just tree lighting ceremony. What festive fun. Even candy trees are becoming shapeless. Yummy, supposedly tree-shaped chocolates with no Christmas word in sight on the wrappers. Merry whatever. One American mall swapped Christmas decorations for a winter-themed glacier. And then, of course, there was the annual Starbucks Xmas Cup that never was.
I asked for my coffee, they asked for my name, and I told them my name is Merry Christmas. So guess what? Starbucks, I tricked you into putting Merry Christmas on your cup.
But we are on to Starbucks. It's not their fault they've gone red. Raised $6,000 for Russian children with autism with the help of our viewers. Attacks on RT by the State Department helped us come up with an idea to crowdfund money for a cause and stand up to media empire. And we did. Our Sunny World, who we donated to, says thank you. Why autism? Because it unites. It's a battle that sees no lines, countries, or policies, and it can bring people together.
Люди с аутизмом рождаются все больше и больше каждый год во всех странах мира, и в Америке, и в России, и во всех странах Европы. И проблема оказать помощь таким детям, таким семьям, это проблема совершенно всеобщая, потому что эта тема действительно совершенно глобальная, и я очень надеюсь на то, что те проблемы, которые сейчас есть в отношениях между разными странами, эти проблемы, возможно, будут преодолены за счет какой-то более высокой идеи, более высокой цели, например, помощи людям с аутизмом во всем мире.
That was the head of Our Sunny World, Igor Spitzberg, who personally says thank you to all that donated. On that note, I leave you from all of us at In the Now. Have a happy, healthy new year. Stay with us for 2016. I think it's going to be a wild ride. Till then, it's now or never.
We sailed across the North Sea. We sailed halfway over from Dover. That's just Dave, Roger, and me.
Away the drops, away the drops, so we waited for some more. Away they came, I wanna say.
Sorry.
I need to have your documental code.
Yes, it's already. I'm coming to your office. Is it all right?
Okay.
It's very important that we have leadership that is helping to forge a different pathway and to clarify for people, war is not the solution to more failed wars. We need a different path forward. We can stop arming the Middle East. Most of the weapons on all sides are actually coming from the U.S.
Where is that country called Russia? No one has ever heard about that country. Never even have heard about Moscow.
Lig met de fik!
Latest news and the week's top stories. Days of fierce fighting culminate in the Taliban making gains in Afghanistan's Helmand province, with reports that the strategic town of Sangin has fallen to the insurgents.
What you're about to see is a testament to the brutality and ferocity of the Syrian civil war. Every house, every street, every block is bitterly contested and fought over.
RT visits a crucial battlefield in the war-torn Syrian capital of Damascus. And crowds defy demonstration bans in Corsica as anti-Arab rallies are held for a third day. Hello there with round-the-clock world news. This is RT International. My name's Colin Bray. We're wrapping up the week's biggest stories for you. This week, the Taliban have been on the offensive in South Afghanistan, taking control of major areas in the opium-rich Helmand province. Afghan officials claim the fight is still ongoing amid reports that the key town of Sangin has fallen to the Taliban.
Your Excellency, Facebook is not the right forum for speaking with you, but as my voice hasn't been heard by you, I don't know what else to do. Please, save Helmand from tragedy.
The fighting is ongoing in Sangin. There is no doubt about that. There is the military is in their position.
Most of the areas of Sangin district is now under the Taliban control.
Afghanistan has seen a Taliban resurgence after last year's withdrawal of the US-led international combat troops. Dozens of people have been killed in recent raids, leading to the capture of some key cities. Casualties in the Afghan military have soared by 27%. Kabul-based political analyst Abdullah Haiwad says NATO's left an opening for banditry in the country.
The Americans and the international community, the Western countries, they left, they abandoned Afghanistan immediately after, the things heated up in Iraq and in Syria. These are the problems we are facing in Afghanistan today. It is definitely, the less attention of Western countries to Afghanistan.
The days of fierce fight in Helmand province come right after US Defense Secretary Ashton Carter visited the country to review security. While the Taliban tightened its grip in Afghanistan, Islamic State's also been thriving on political turmoil and power vacuums in the Middle East and in Africa. Libya's recently suffered an increased ISIL presence around its stronghold in Sirte. The jihadist group boasted the launch of its own so-called police force in the coastal city. This video purports to demonstrate the terrorists' grip on the region. Islamic State's also fighting for control of the eastern city of Ajdabir, which would allow ISIL access to Libya's largest oil field. In fact, it's also now trying to seize territories right along the Libyan coast. Western jets have been on standby at bases across the Mediterranean, but neither of Libya's two governments, the official authority in Tobruk or the self-proclaimed one in Tripoli, are willing to allow any foreign intervention. It was Western interference that led to the ousting and killing of Libya's former leader, Muammar Gaddafi, in 2011, and the country's struggled to find stability since.
We are not getting, for the time being, any support, any tangible support, except for some visits that we have had so far. Our realistic hope for the new year is to get tangible support from the international community once the government of national accord is set up. Indeed, what has lacked in Libya has been the insecurity and the lack of the establishment of the state grip on our territories, so that we have had the growing presence of Daesh.
Turkey has ramped up its crackdown on Kurdish militants in the southeast. But it's often civilians that are paying the price, getting caught in the crossfire. We report on that later in the programme. The Syrian conflict shows no sign of abating, with the army stepping up its campaign against Islamists across the country. Militants have been pushed out of a number of areas in the provinces of Aleppo and Latakia. In the capital, Damascus, fierce fighting is continuing between the army and the rebels. Some areas have been contested for almost 3 years. RT's Murad Gazdiev reports.
Joba, the closest battleground to Damascus. What you're about to see is a testament to the brutality and ferocity of the Syrian civil war. Every house, every street, every block is bitterly contested and fought over. Often, when the dust settles, there's not a lot left of whatever it is that was won. And this is happening on a nationwide scale. And for Islamist rebels, Joba is the key to the city.
Jobar is incredibly important for them. Through here, they keep trying to break into Damascus, which they also regularly shell from here.
The state of it should make clear how much blood both sides have shed for this district. Getting around Jobar is a challenge in and of itself. You can never tell what piece of rubble or what window a sniper might be hiding in. So a lot of the movement around here happens through places like these, through trenches and tunnels which dot the city. Every so often, we'd come across a bunker. Inside, Syrian troops kept vigil and exchanged small arms fire with rebels.
This is the main street, and we have to watch for vehicles and car bombs so they don't blow up near us.
While war and fighting rage in Jobar itself, it's also happening underground. Wherever rebels go, they dig massive tunnel networks like this one. This is just one entrance. Dozens and dozens around Jobar itself. And of course, it complicates street fighting even further, because the Syrian military has to clear, vast, really vast tunnel networks like these, and they stretch for hundreds and hundreds of kilometers below ground.
Streets and even individual houses, we're told, are held by Islamist groups of various flavors. What complicates any effort to drive them out is the cramped space.
While there are plenty of vehicles, heavy armor like this tank, it is a liability in urban warfare, urban combat, because space is so limited and attackers could be hiding anywhere. So the tanks are parked here, seeing little action.
Nevertheless, recent government gains have forced rebels to pull up to 1,000 fighters out of Joba to reinforce other areas. Rebels say they won't give up their only foothold in the capital, especially considering that the fate of Damascus may well be decided in this scarred ruin. Morad Gazdiev, RT, from Joba, Syria.
It's been alleged that former US Army top brass covertly supplied intelligence to the Syrian president. They transferred it via other states to help Assad's army against the jihadists, but without the knowledge of the White House. That's all according to investigative journalist and New Yorker magazine contributor Seymour Hersh. Among his sources, he includes the former director of the US Defense Intelligence Agency. Pentagon officials refute the allegations as completely false, so we spoke to the author.
It is pretty amazing when a group of generals say to themselves, I don't know why this guy is listening to us. I don't know what we're going to do about it, but we have to do something about it. They were acting on behalf of what they thought the country should be doing. And so that was the leverage they used, I think, to make this extraordinary decision that they're going to work with other people to help out, or at least to give Bashar the intelligence he needs to survive. Why we would want in the United States for Bashar not to survive, given the consequences of having, let's say, the Islamic State or al-Nusra or groups allied with them with the same point of view on a country with bordering on Iran and Israel. I mean, my God, that would be a formula for complete chaos, as we have in Libya. It just makes no sense. I mean, come on. They know that these groups, that they're at least at some level, they understand that the groups they insist are so moderate have a lot of ties. You can't exist without being in league with al-Nusra or the Islamic State. You know, actually, the article is really not about what I'm saying. It's about what the military said. It's about a bunch of generals just feeling confounded about the fact that they're reporting all this stuff. There's no moderates. The moderates don't really exist. That you have to deal with Russia. Actually, if I'm Putin looking at it, I'm thinking, we're supposed to be in the same bed in terms of fighting international terrorism. We're all secular countries who believe in freedom of religion. And here we are. The United States has done what since 9/11? They've knocked off a secular guy in Iraq. They've knocked off a secular guy in Libya, and they're trying their best to make trouble for a secular guy in Syria.
The French Mediterranean island of Corsica has seen a third day